What do you become when you no longer follow the world? Not when you rebel for the sake of rebellion, not when you drift without direction, but when you consciously choose to walk a path that belongs only to you. What kind of person emerges when there is no external hand guiding you, no map, no master to answer to? The world might call it aimless, but the Japanese had a word for this kind of soul: Ronin, a samurai without a master, a warrior untethered, not bound by feudal code, not protected by power or status, free and terrifyingly alone. But there's a common misunderstanding about what being a Ronin really means. It's easy to romanticize the lone wolf, the wanderer, the outsider. Yet the Ronin is not some broken figure, drifting without purpose. The true Ronin is something else entirely. He is self-guided, purposeful, disciplined without needing discipline imposed on him. He is a person who chooses solitude not out of bitterness, but because he knows the cost of false belonging. He understands that many walk in groups simply to avoid facing their own direction. The Ronin walks alone because his path is his, and no one else can walk it for him. This is where we meet Miyamoto Musashi, perhaps the greatest Ronin to ever live. A man who defeated over 60 opponents in duels to the death. A man who refused to serve any lord, even though he could have gained wealth, power, and comfort. Instead, he slept on cave floors, wrote his deepest thoughts with a calligrapher's grace, and trained endlessly, not just in swordsmanship, but in painting, poetry, philosophy. Why? Because Musashi didn't just master the blade, he mastered himself, and he knew that the only way to do that was alone. This video isn't a tribute to violence. It's not about sword fighting or Japanese history. It's about a way of life. A philosophy that strips away the noise of the world and leaves you with something rare: silence, clarity, and truth. Musashi's path wasn't lonely. It was honest. He didn't need titles, likes, or applause to feel worthy. He walked away from the systems that others relied on, not because he couldn't compete, but because he understood something few do. You cannot become exceptional by clinging to what is common. So what happens when you no longer follow the world? You become responsible for your own direction. You stop outsourcing your purpose. You begin to write your own code. It's not easy, but it's real. This is the beginning of that journey, a journey into the philosophy of walking alone, not as exile, but as evolution. We're going to explore what it means to live like a Ronin, to cut away the noise, to find strength in solitude, to embrace the uncomfortable freedom that comes from self-mastery, and ultimately, to realize that the path we fear most, the solitary one, is often the only path worth walking. So if you've ever felt like you don't quite fit, like the systems around you weren't built for your soul, you're not lost. You're just standing at the threshold. And maybe, just maybe, you were never meant to follow. Maybe, like Musashi, you were meant to walk alone. To understand the philosophy of walking alone, you must first understand the man who embodied it completely, Miyamoto Musashi. He wasn't a myth, though his life often reads like one. He wasn't merely a swordsman, though his blade became legend. Musashi was a real human being, flesh, blood, doubt, decision, who lived in Japan over 400 years ago, and yet the way he lived continues to speak to people seeking purpose, freedom, and mastery today. Musashi was born in 1584 during the Sengoku period, a time of chaos, civil war, and shifting allegiances in Japan. It was an age of warriors, and the path of the samurai was one of the few ways to rise above your birth. But Musashi was not born into luxury or safety. His mother likely died when he was young, and his father, himself a swordsman, may have either abandoned him or died early. Much of Musashi's early life is shrouded in mystery, but this much is clear. From a young age, he stood alone. At just 13 years old, Musashi fought his first duel. Imagine that. A child, barely a teenager, standing across from a grown samurai armed with real weapons, real stakes. No padding, no points, no referees, just life and death. And Musashi won. Not by following a polished style or obeying a formal code, but by relying on instinct, intelligence, and pure will. This early victory was not the end of something, it was the beginning. Over the next few decades, Musashi would go on to fight more than 60 duels, and he never lost. Some of his opponents were among the most skilled and respected swordsmen in Japan, but Musashi's victories didn't come from brute force alone. They came from an approach that was utterly his own. He refused to be predictable. He fought with both hands, sometimes with two swords at once. He would arrive early or late. He would use wooden swords instead of steel. He didn't play by the rules. He understood them, and then he transcended them. What's remarkable isn't just that Musashi won, it's how he chose to live. Despite his fame, he consistently rejected the life of prestige that could have easily been his. In that era, a skilled warrior could secure a place under a powerful lord, earning wealth, servants, land, and status. Musashi was offered these things. He could have lived in comfort, celebrated as a master, but he turned it all down, again and again. He walked away from power and chose the path of solitude. He lived like a hermit, sometimes in caves, sometimes in small huts, seeking not pleasure but purity, not applause but clarity. And it's here that Musashi begins to evolve from a duelist into a philosopher. He understood that the sword was just one expression of something deeper. It wasn't about killing, it was about mastering the self. Every duel, every choice to withdraw from society, every moment of silence was part of something greater, a lifelong pursuit of inner stillness and unshakable presence. In the final years of his life, Musashi retired from fighting and turned to writing. His most famous work, The Book of Five Rings, was written just weeks before his death. It's often categorized as a book on martial strategy, but that's misleading. It's far more than that. The Book of Five Rings is about how to live. It's about how to see clearly, act decisively, remain grounded, and master any craft, not just swordsmanship. Musashi divides the book into 5 chapters: earth, water, fire, wind, and void, each representing different aspects of strategy, mindset, and awareness. In the earth chapter, he talks about the foundation, knowing your terrain, knowing yourself. In water, he explains the need to be adaptable, fluid, responsive. Fire is about engagement, how to face conflict and seize the initiative. Wind critiques other schools, not to belittle them, but to teach the importance of transcending style. And finally, void, the most abstract and profound, touches on the idea of formlessness, emptiness, the state of no mind, from which pure action flows. It's Zen, warrior code, and raw lived wisdom all in one. When Musashi knew his death was near, he didn't pick up a sword to go out in glory. He didn't surround himself with admirers. He withdrew to a cave and began writing his final teachings, the Dokudo, the way of walking alone. 21 short precepts, no commentary, just raw, distilled truth. Lines like, "Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. Resentment and complaint are appropriate neither for oneself nor others. Respect Buddha and the gods without counting on their help. Do not fear death." These were not commandments barked by a guru. They were reminders, etched from a life of direct experience. He wasn't warning us from the sidelines. He had walked the path, every brutal, quiet, honest step. What's most striking about Musashi's story is that he chose solitude. He chose discomfort. He chose the uncertainty of the open road over the certainty of a throne. And he didn't do it because he was broken. He wasn't pushed away. He walked away. There's a critical difference. Many people today find themselves isolated and think of solitude as something shameful or sad. But Musashi shows us that solitude, when chosen, is a source of incredible power. It is where you stop being what the world tells you to be and begin discovering what you truly are. He wasn't running from anything. He was running towards something, mastery. Not mastery over others, but over the self. That's what makes Musashi's path so compelling. That's why it still speaks to us centuries later. Because deep down many of us feel that same pull. The desire to break away from the noise, from the pressure to belong, from the endless demand to be what others expect. We crave stillness, integrity, purpose. Musashi lived that. He didn't talk about it, he became it. So when we speak of Musashi, not just as a swordsman, but as the Ronin archetype, we're not glorifying isolation or violence. We're honoring the rare courage it takes to walk alone, not because you have no place, but because you've decided to make your own. He didn't belong to the world, he belonged to the path. And that is why his story matters, not because he won, but because of how he chose to live. We live in a world that fears silence. The moment there's a pause, we reach for a screen. The instant we're alone, we feel the need to broadcast, check in, scroll, or reply. We've been taught, subtly and persistently, that solitude is something to be filled. Filled with noise, filled with company, filled with approval. We wear our social calendars like armor. We check how many people liked our last thought before deciding if it was worth having. But this constant connection often leads to disconnection. Not from others, but from ourselves. And this is where the power of solitude begins. Solitude is not the absence of people, it's the presence of yourself. And most people have no idea who that person is. Musashi knew, that's why he actively sought solitude. Not because he was trying to escape the world, but because he was trying to understand himself without the world's interference. After decades of dueling, travel, and refining his skills, Musashi didn't retire into wealth or ease. He chose stillness. He isolated himself in a cave, not to hide, but to confront. To strip away everything that wasn't essential. This wasn't a retreat out of fear, it was a deliberate act of power. He understood that to lead oneself, one must first be with oneself, fully. Without distraction, without noise, without performance. Solitude is a space where the masks fall away. There's no one to impress, no one to react to, just you, raw, unfiltered, honest. It's in solitude that you hear the voice beneath all the others, the one that often gets drowned out by the chorus of opinions and expectations. That voice is your compass, and if you ignore it long enough, you lose direction. You start walking paths not meant for you. You become a stranger in your own life. Musashi's cave wasn't empty. It was full of focus, full of discipline, full of truth. That's what makes solitude powerful. It's not passive. It's not about being lonely or withdrawn. It's about becoming aligned. When you're alone, you start to feel what's real and what's not. What actually matters to you, not what you've been told should matter. It's the place where all external noise fades and what remains is a kind of unshakable knowing. That kind of clarity can't be faked, and it can't be handed to you by others. You have to find it on your own, or not at all. The Stoics understood this. Epictetus, born a slave, said, "The more we value things outside our control, the less control we have." And what do we often value the most? Approval? Praise, validation, other people's perception of us. But Musashi and the Stoics remind us to need nothing from others is the foundation of freedom. That includes their attention, their applause, even their understanding. When you no longer need others to confirm your worth, your mind becomes your own. And that is when true strength begins. Seneca wrote, "Look at those whose names are in everyone's mouth. They are often the most troubled inside." Why? Because fame is a prison built from applause. You become trapped in the expectations of others. But when you learn to sit in solitude, you stop performing. You start becoming. Not someone else's version of strong or wise or successful, but your own. You begin to understand that solitude is not weakness. It's training. It's refinement. It's a sharpening of the self. Musashi's solitude wasn't idle. He trained every day. He wrote, he painted, he meditated, he honed his perception and instincts. In isolation, he was more active than most are in crowds. He once said, "You may abandon your own body, but you must preserve your honor." That's the kind of inner commitment that solitude demands. When no one is watching, will you still live with integrity? When no one is clapping, will you still keep going? That's what solitude teaches. Not how to be alone, but how to be responsible to yourself when there is no audience, no reward, no recognition, just you and your truth. In solitude, discipline stops being punishment and starts becoming nourishment. You no longer work hard to prove something. You work hard because it aligns you with your purpose. You no longer need others to hold you accountable. You become the one who doesn't let yourself off the hook. That's the quiet power of a person who's comfortable alone. They're not easily manipulated. They're not desperate for a seat at someone else's table. They are the table. They don't chase belonging because they've already come home to themselves. But this kind of strength scares people, because it can't be controlled. A person who is fine being alone is someone you can't bribe with approval or blackmail with rejection. They've faced silence and made peace with it. They've sat in the void and emerged with clarity. And the world doesn't know what to do with someone like that. Today we confuse connection with consumption. We are connected to hundreds, maybe thousands of people, yet feel deeply unknown, even to ourselves. Solitude reverses that. It reconnects us with the one person we actually live with, ourself. And that reconnection can be uncomfortable at first. It brings up what we've avoided. It shows us our weaknesses, our addictions, our noise. But if we stay with it, if we endure that discomfort, it also gives us back our power. Musashi's solitude gave him more than peace. It gave him perspective. It allowed him to see the game others were playing, chasing rank, favor, recognition, and step outside it. Not to be better than anyone, but to be free from the chase. His power wasn't that he didn't care what others thought. It's that he had trained himself to not need what they offered. That kind of self-sufficiency is rare, and it's forged always in solitude. When you look at your own life, ask yourself, when was the last time you truly sat with yourself, with no distractions, no devices, no noise? Could you go a full day without speaking to anyone? Could you go a full hour without checking your phone? Could you sit in a room alone and not feel the need to escape? These are not small questions. They're the beginning of sovereignty, to be truly alone, and to be okay, even empowered by that, is to reclaim something sacred. In that space, you stop being pulled in every direction and start becoming whole. You stop reacting to the world and start responding from within. That's where clarity lives. That's where strength grows. That's where freedom begins. Solitude is not exile. It's a return to yourself, a return to your values, a return to what's real beneath the noise. In a culture obsessed with connection, solitude has become a form of rebellion. But it's the rebellion that saves you. Musashi shows us that the strongest path isn't always the loudest one. It's often the quietest. It's the path where no one is cheering but you keep walking, where no one is watching but you still act with honor, where no one is guiding you but you follow a compass that lives in your chest. This is the strength in solitude, and the longer you sit in it, the more you realize You were never really alone. You were just meeting yourself for the first time. There's a certain kind of person the world doesn't know what to do with. Someone who doesn't ask for permission. Someone who listens to their own voice louder than the voices around them. Someone who walks away from the expected path and doesn't look back. Miyamoto Musashi was that kind of person. He never bowed to a lord. He never aligned himself with a political faction. He refused titles, turned down powerful allies, and chose to walk his path without anyone else's authority over him. Not because he was rebellious, not because he was trying to prove a point, but because he understood something that most people spend their whole lives avoiding. To be truly free, you must walk without a master. Let's be clear, in the world Musashi lived in, that choice was radical. Japan in the 1600s was a land built on hierarchy. Loyalty to a master wasn't just tradition, it was law, identity, honor. For a samurai, allegiance defined your place in the world. To serve a lord meant safety, belonging, reputation, and income. To reject all of that meant danger, exile, and social invisibility. And Musashi chose exile, not once, but continually. At any moment, he could have sworn loyalty and secured status. He didn't, because he saw that with every ounce of comfort came a weight, the weight of obedience, of compromise, of being controlled. This doesn't just apply to ancient warriors, it applies to us, right now. Because we live in a world full of masters. Not always people, but systems, expectations, scripts. Your boss might not wear a sword, but if you let him define your worth, he is your master. Social media might not command you with words, but if you check it before checking in with yourself, it controls you. Cultural norms, trends, what's considered successful or normal, these are all invisible masters. They whisper to you constantly, do this, buy that, act like them, chase this dream, stay in line. And the scary part is, they do it so smoothly, you might not even realize you're being owned. That's why the idea of being masterless today is more relevant than ever. To walk the path of no master doesn't mean rejecting all authority. It doesn't mean isolation or anarchy. It means choosing to live on your terms. It means questioning who's pulling the strings of your life, and if they're even strings you want to be attached to. Most people follow a script they didn't write. Go to school, get the job, climb the ladder, buy the things, fit in, don't rock the boat. And many wake up one day in a life that looks right on the outside but feels empty on the inside. Why? Because they've been living someone else's story. Musashi never made that mistake. He wasn't rich, he wasn't adored by the masses, but he was his own. That's the trade. When you choose to walk without a master, you give up certainty, you give up comfort, you give up being easily understood. People might think you're lost. They might think you're strange, arrogant, selfish, naive, and sometimes it will feel like they're right. There will be days when you question everything, when you wonder if maybe it would be easier to go back, to fit in, to follow the script. But then there will be days when you look around and realize you're free. And that kind of realization doesn't come with applause. It comes with silence, the kind that only a truly sovereign person can recognize. True freedom isn't just the ability to choose what you want. It's the ability to say no to what you don't, and that no is costly. It might mean walking away from a high-paying job that drains your soul. It might mean disappointing your parents because you chose a path they don't understand. It might mean spending nights alone instead of being surrounded by people who don't see the real you. But that cost buys something rare, authenticity. And once you taste it, you can't go back to pretending. Musashi shows us that you can be powerful without being in power, that you can be respected without seeking attention, that you can walk alone and still walk with purpose. In modern life, walking without a master means living intentionally. It means knowing your values so clearly that you don't have to be told who you are. It means building a life that reflects your principles, even if it doesn't look like anyone else's, especially then. Ask yourself, who or what is your master right now? Is it your job, your social image, your fear of being misunderstood, your need to be liked? These forces are subtle. They dress up as normal, but they steer your choices. They shape your days, and they often keep you from becoming who you're meant to be. To walk without a master is to own your time, to own your attention, to own your decisions. It doesn't mean never listening to others. It means choosing when you do, and knowing why. It means standing in front of your life and saying, "This is mine," even if no one else understands, even if no one applauds. That's the kind of integrity that can't be given. It must be claimed. You will be tested. The path of no master is not paved. It's quiet, uncertain, and often uphill. You will be tempted to go back, to hand the wheel to someone else, to trade your freedom for validation. But remember, Musashi didn't win every battle because he was stronger. He won because he refused to fight on anyone else's terms. He chose his ground. He chose his timing. He chose his values. That's what made him unstoppable. There's a line from the Dokudo, Musashi's final writing before his death. Do not seek to possess either goods or fiefs for your old age. In other words, don't build your life around comfort. Build it around character. Don't serve what doesn't align with your soul, no matter how tempting or secure it might seem. And so we return to the question, what would your life look like if you had no master, no employer defining your worth, no peer pressure shaping your choices, no algorithm curating your beliefs, no trend dictating your voice, just you, fully responsible, fully awake, fully free? Most people will never know what that feels like, but some will. A few will break away. A few will walk that path of no master. Not because it's easy, but because it's true. Musashi walked that path until the day he died. Alone, yes, but never lost. A life without a master is not a life without direction. It's not aimless. It's not chaos. If anything, it requires more structure, more clarity, more discipline than a life that is dictated by someone else. Because when no one is telling you what to do, it becomes your responsibility to know exactly who you are and how you choose to live. That's why Musashi, despite rejecting all external control, followed a path more strict, more intentional, and more focused than most people ever imagine. He had no master, but he did have a code. Musashi's code was not a list of rules passed down from a teacher. It wasn't inherited from a religion or dictated by a political authority. It came from direct experience, from trial, from discipline, from solitude. It was forged like a sword, through fire and pressure and repetition. Near the end of his life, Musashi wrote it down in a short but powerful document called the Dokudo, which translates to The Way of Walking Alone. It contains just 21 lines, no explanations, no fluff. Each one is a sharp blade, not for cutting others, but for carving away everything false in yourself. These precepts are not easy. They are not designed to make you feel good. They are designed to wake you up. Take this one. Do not seek pleasure for its own sake. In a world built around chasing comfort, entertainment, stimulation, this hits hard. What would it mean to live not by the pursuit of pleasure, but by the pursuit of growth? To do things not because they feel good, but because they make you better. Musashi isn't saying pleasure is evil. He's saying if it becomes your compass, you will be lost, because pleasure is fleeting. It doesn't anchor you, it distracts you, and distraction is the enemy of self-mastery. Another line: accept everything just the way it is. This is not passivity, it's presence. It's the radical act of seeing reality clearly, without flinching, without resistance. Most people waste their energy fighting what already is. They argue with the moment, they drown in denial, blame, or fantasy. Musashi's code tells you, stop, accept, begin there. Only from acceptance can true action emerge. Only from clarity can strategy be born. The world doesn't bend to your preferences, and it doesn't need to. You bend to the moment like water, like a sword in perfect alignment with the fight. And then there's the most difficult one of all. Do not fear death. That's not a metaphor. Musashi faced death dozens of times. In duels, in war, in isolation. But to not fear death is to live fully. It's to stop holding back, to stop delaying your truth. When death is no longer your enemy, life becomes your ally. You act, you speak, you walk your path without flinching. Most people aren't living, they're avoiding dying. Musashi flipped that. He lived with death in his awareness, and because of that, he lived wide awake. Now here's the challenge for us. What do you stand for when no one is watching? Not what do you believe, but what do you live by? There's a difference. Beliefs are easy. You can agree with a quote, you can nod at an idea, but a code, a real personal code, is something you practice. Something you hold to when it's inconvenient, when it hurts, when no one is rewarding you for it. A code is the structure you build around your soul so that when the world shakes, you don't. Musashi didn't have followers or mentors or status, but he had that. A spine made of principles. A way of being that didn't change with the weather. And that's something anyone can choose, if they're willing to do the work. So, how do you begin to build your own code? Start simple. Sit down with a blank page, not a phone, not a screen, something you can feel with your hands. Write this question at the top. What do I stand for? And don't rush it. Don't write what sounds good, write what's true. What would you do if no one could see you? If there was no applause, no criticism, no reward? What would you do if the only person you had to impress was your future self? Next, write the lines that define you. They don't need to be elegant. They don't need to match anyone else's. They just need to be yours. Maybe your code is, speak truth, even when it costs me. Or, show up every day, especially when I don't want to. Or, do not waste time. It is my only currency. You don't need 21 lines like Musashi. Start with 3, but make them real. And most importantly, live them. Living by a code doesn't mean you become rigid. It means you become reliable to yourself. When life gets chaotic, you don't need to guess how to act. Your code guides you. When you're lost in emotion or doubt, you return to your principles. Your code is your anchor in the storm. And when the world tries to seduce you with comfort, distraction, or conformity, your code is what keeps you sharp. And yes, it will cost you. Living by a code might mean saying no to opportunities that don't align with your values. It might mean walking away from people who don't respect your path. It might mean long nights where you question if it's worth it. But the reward is rare. You'll be able to look at yourself in the mirror and say, I know who I am. This is what it means to walk the Ronin path. Not just to walk alone, but to walk honestly. To live without a master, but never without discipline. To reject control, but never reject responsibility. The world is full of people drifting. People who change shape depending on who's watching. People who believe in convenience, not conviction. But you don't have to be that. You can live by your code. And when you do, the noise fades. The doubt fades. The need to explain yourself fades. Musashi's code wasn't for followers, it was for him. That's why it worked. That's why it lasted. Because it wasn't performance, it was practice. And the invitation is there for all of us. You don't need a sword, you don't need a cave. You just need to decide that you're done living passively, that you're ready to write your own rulebook and live it. So grab the page, ask the hard questions, and begin, not tomorrow, now. Because the longer you wait to define who you are, the more the world will try to do it for you. Being alone doesn't mean being unprepared. Walking the path of a Ronin is not just about solitude, it's about readiness. Not just breaking free from control, but developing the strength to face whatever comes your way. The Ronin doesn't escape the world, he simply meets it differently, with stillness instead of panic, with clarity instead of chaos. This inner state is what made Miyamoto Musashi so dangerous, so effective, and so legendary. He didn't just master the sword, he mastered the warrior's mind, a way of thinking and being that allowed him to face conflict, uncertainty, and change with unshakable calm. Musashi didn't thrive because the world around him was calm, far from it. He lived during one of Japan's most unstable eras, a time of civil war, shifting allegiances, political upheaval, and endless violence. But in that chaos, he stood still. While others clung to rank or tradition for safety, Musashi relied on something deeper, his mind. He trained it relentlessly. Not just to calculate strategy or technique, but to remain clear when everything around him was falling apart. That kind of presence isn't natural, it's earned. And for Musashi, it came through a concept deeply rooted in Zen, Mushin, no mind. At first glance, no mind sounds like emptiness, like thoughtlessness. But it's the opposite. Mushin is not the absence of thought. It's the absence of clutter. It's what remains when fear, doubt, hesitation, and ego have been stripped away. In Mushin, you are fully aware, fully present, but not distracted by the voice in your head second-guessing your every move. There's no script, no rehearsed plan. You just act, immediately, correctly, intuitively. That's why Musashi was so unpredictable in battle. He didn't follow form, he followed flow. He responded to what was, not what he wished would happen. Think about that in the context of modern life. Most people are mentally scattered. When stress hits, they panic. When something unexpected happens, they freeze. They need time to adjust, to think, to analyze. But the Ronin can't afford hesitation. Whether in a duel or in daily life, delay is defeat. Mushin is about training your mind to be as sharp as your weapon. It's about being ready, not with a plan, but with a mindset that can handle anything. And that's not limited to warriors. In fact, it's more useful now than ever. To cultivate Mushin in modern life means learning how to stay composed in discomfort. When plans fail, when people disappoint you, when life throws the unexpected, do you spiral or do you adapt? Musashi's strategy was simple: stay calm, observe, respond. He didn't get attached to outcomes. He didn't panic when the situation changed. He flowed like water but cut like steel. His power wasn't just in what he did, it was in how he did it, with presence, with poise, with total self-command. This idea aligns closely with Stoicism, another philosophy built on facing life's chaos without flinching. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength." That's the warrior's mind, not the ability to control the world, but the ability to control your response. Seneca put it this way: "We suffer more in imagination than in reality." In other words, Our fears are often illusions, projections of a mind that hasn't been trained. But Musashi and the Stoics shared this insight. A prepared mind doesn't fear hardship, it welcomes it, because hardship is where strength is refined. Musashi trained not just in swordsmanship, but in painting, calligraphy, sculpture, and strategy. Why? Because he knew that the way is broad. As he famously said, "If you know the way broadly, you will see it in all things." He wasn't just learning to fight, he was learning how to move through the world, with grace, with awareness, with mastery. Every discipline became a mirror for his mind. Whether holding a brush or a blade, he was practicing the same thing: calm focus, pure action, no hesitation. And this is something we can practice too. You don't need a sword to train like a warrior. You don't need a battlefield to prepare your mind. Everyday life is full of small duels, moments of stress, conflict, fear, temptation. How do you respond? Do you react emotionally, impulsively? Or do you observe, breathe, and respond with intention? That's the practice. That's Mushin in motion. Start with your morning routine. Start with how you respond to criticism. Start with how you handle delay, discomfort, or disappointment. These are the perfect training grounds for cultivating stillness. Stillness doesn't mean inaction. It means clear action, deliberate action. Action that comes from choice, not compulsion. The Ronin doesn't suppress emotion, but he's not ruled by it either. He feels everything, but lets nothing control him. That's the paradox of the warrior's mind. Fierce but calm, fluid but grounded, alone but never lost. In a world addicted to reaction, the Ronin stands out because he responds. In a culture driven by performance, he is real. In times of panic, he is the eye of the storm. And this isn't just poetic, it's practical. The more you cultivate stillness, the more you win, in relationships, in work, in purpose. Because you're not chasing, you're not running, you're ready. Musashi faced death more than 60 times and never lost. Not because he was the fastest, not because he was the strongest, but because he remained still inside. His enemies swung swords, but Musashi read minds. He anticipated, adjusted, acted, no wasted movement, no noise, just presence. That kind of composure comes from one place, knowing yourself. That's the root of all readiness. If you know who you are, what you value, what you're willing to endure, then the world can't shake you. That's why Musashi always trained alone. He didn't need anyone else to tell him what to do. He didn't rely on anyone else's strategy. He didn't borrow strength. He built it. Day by day, choice by choice, breath by breath. So how do we build the warrior's mind in our world? First, stop outsourcing your peace. Don't wait for the world to calm down so you can feel calm. Train your nervous system to stay grounded no matter what. Cold showers, silence, physical practice, intentional breathing. Second, eliminate distractions. The mind needs space to settle. You can't think clearly in a room full of noise. That includes digital noise. Cut it, reduce it, protect your attention like it's sacred, because it is. And third, face challenge deliberately. Don't avoid it, seek it. Musashi didn't sharpen his sword once and call it a day. He put himself in the fire over and over, because that's how clarity is forged. A Ronin is not reckless, he's razor sharp, and he knows that clarity under pressure is not a talent, it's a habit, it's a choice. Every time you stay grounded instead of panicking, you become more powerful. Every time you listen instead of reacting, you become more dangerous, in the best way. Stillness is your superpower, and in a world full of noise, it makes you unstoppable. You don't need to wear robes or carry a sword to walk the path of the Ronin. You don't need to retreat into a mountain cave or swear off modern life. The Ronin path isn't about living in the past. It's about living with principle in the present. It's about stripping away what's false and building a life that's yours, deeply, honestly, deliberately. And while the world around us has changed since Musashi's time, the core struggle remains the same. Will you follow the script handed to you, or will you write your own? Most people today aren't bound to a feudal lord, but many are still serving masters, invisible ones, social approval, career status, financial anxiety, constant comparison, cultural trends. These pressures are more subtle now, more sophisticated but just as powerful. They shape what we chase, how we speak, what we believe, and what we avoid. The modern Ronin doesn't just reject these blindly, he sees them, and he chooses something better, a path of intention. A life not built by algorithms or groupthink, but by clarity, solitude, and self-respect. You don't need to become a monk or a minimalist overnight. You don't have to disappear or start shaving your head. You just have to start choosing. You have to make small, consistent choices that move you toward authenticity and away from conformity. The modern Ronin walks with his own rhythm, no matter how loud the world gets. He knows that it's not rebellion for rebellion's sake. It's alignment. It's remembering who you are when everything around you is trying to make you forget. Let's make this practical. First, reject blind conformity. That doesn't mean rejecting everything, it means questioning everything. Why do you want what you want? Who gave you your definition of success? What would you do with your life if no one was watching? These aren't rhetorical questions, they're tools. Use them to examine your work, your routines, your relationships, anything that feels like it was handed to you. Dig into it. Keep what's real. Let go of what's just noise. Second, choose solitude. Not all the time, but enough to hear yourself think. Enough to separate your voice from the voices around you. We've talked about this before, but in the modern world, solitude is a radical act. Take one day a week where you disconnect. No phone, no distractions, just you, a notebook, maybe a walk. It's not about escaping others, it's about reconnecting with yourself. That's where clarity comes from, not from scrolling, but from silence. Third, build your code. We already covered this in depth, but here's where it meets your daily life. Once you've written your code, even if it's just 3 rules, live by it, every day. Make it visible. Tape it to your mirror, carry it in your wallet, recite it in the morning. A code is not a decoration, it's a compass. When things get hard, and they will, that code reminds you how to move forward, with integrity, with clarity, with discipline. Fourth, live light. Musashi traveled with almost nothing, not because he had to, but because he wanted to move freely. In a modern context, this doesn't mean selling all your things. It means asking, what's weighing me down? What's cluttering my space, my mind, my heart? What subscriptions do you never use? What social obligations drain you? What ideas are you holding on to that no longer serve who you're becoming? Let go, simplify, travel lighter, physically, emotionally, mentally, because freedom isn't found in excess, it's found in clarity. Fifth, stay adaptable. The Ronin didn't have a fixed role in society. He had to stay sharp, learn quickly, move when the situation demanded it. That's a valuable mindset in a world that's constantly shifting. Jobs change, technologies evolve, the world moves fast. The Ronin isn't rigid, he's resilient. He doesn't panic when things break. He recalibrates, learns, adjusts. He knows that survival favors the flexible, not the fixed. Sixth, learn from hardship. Musashi embraced discomfort as a training ground, and in your life, pain is part of the process. That doesn't mean you go looking for suffering, but when it comes, and it will, use it. Let it refine you. Every difficulty is a mirror. Every failure is a teacher. Don't numb it, don't run. Meet it with stillness, with breath, with the question, what is this showing me? Because sometimes the obstacle is not in the way, it is the way. Seventh, train the mind. If you don't, someone else will. In a world of endless content, information is cheap, but wisdom is rare. Start reading again, not just scrolling. Read philosophy, read fiction, read anything that stretches your mind and feeds your spirit. And write, journal daily, even just a few sentences, not for perfection, for reflection. This is how you understand your thoughts instead of being ruled by them. And finally, detox your attention. You cannot live like a Ronin if your mind belongs to your screen. You can't train stillness if you never put down your phone. Digital detachment doesn't mean deleting everything. It means controlling your inputs, set boundaries, turn off notifications, limit what you consume, choose signal over noise, create more than you consume, because attention is energy, and energy is life. Don't give it away freely. These practices aren't just suggestions, they're tools. Sharpen them daily. Use them to build a life of presence, integrity, and freedom. Because the truth is, your job is not your identity. Your followers are not your worth. Your productivity is not your soul. You are not here to impress the world. You are here to become yourself. And that takes courage. That takes solitude. That takes clarity. And the willingness to stand alone. But here's the thing no one tells you. Standing alone doesn't mean being alone. The more you walk your path, the more you'll begin to recognize others on theirs. Quietly, humbly, with eyes that understand. They won't be many, but they'll be real, and that's enough. The Ronin doesn't walk for applause, he walks for truth. So take a moment right now, breathe, ask yourself, where am I still performing? Where am I still following instead of choosing? What needs to be let go and what needs to be built? Write it down, sit with it, let it sink in. The modern Ronin doesn't need a battlefield to fight. He's already in one, inside his own mind, inside the pressure to conform, inside the noise that drowns clarity. And every day he chooses presence over panic, purpose over distraction, the real over the easy. That's the way, and you can walk it too. At the end of his life, Miyamoto Musashi didn't seek a grand stage. He didn't gather admirers or hold a final duel to seal his legend. He didn't crave one last victory. Instead, he retreated, as he always had, into solitude, into stillness, into silence. In a cave called Raigando, Musashi sat down with a brush and left behind his final gift to the world. His thoughts, his truth, his code. He didn't leave us trophies or riches. He left clarity. The last thing he gave to the world was wisdom, because that's what he had truly mastered. He died alone, but not empty. Quite the opposite. Musashi died full. Full of experience, of principle, of intention. Full of himself in the best possible way. Not inflated by ego, but complete because he had given himself entirely to the path. He didn't hold back. He didn't delay. He didn't waste his life waiting to be understood. He walked the road most avoid, the road of solitude, of truth, of radical ownership, and he walked it all the way to the end. There's a kind of freedom that only comes when you live like that, when you stop chasing what others think you should be, when you stop measuring yourself by borrowed metrics, by how many people clap, or how much money you've made, or how closely your life resembles the blueprint sold to you. Musashi reminds us that the point isn't to win the game. The point is to see through it, to realize that you were never meant to play someone else's version of success. You were meant to write your own rules and follow them completely. Most people spend their lives trying to be understood, to be accepted, to be approved of. But there's something more important than being understood, and that's being true. The truth is often quiet. It doesn't make you popular. It doesn't always get you likes or applause, but it grounds you. It makes your life yours. And in the end, that's what matters. When everything else is stripped away, status, possessions, reputation, what remains is who you chose to be. Walking alone doesn't mean being lost. It means forging the map yourself. It means waking up and asking not what should I do, but what's real for me. It means building your life from the inside out, not the outside in. It means risking the loneliness of not fitting in exchange for the peace of belonging to yourself. It's not always comfortable. In fact, it rarely is. There will be times you feel misunderstood, times you feel like the world is moving in one direction and you're quietly walking in the opposite. That's okay. That's part of the way. The Ronin doesn't walk to impress. He walks to become. He walks not because the path is easy, but because the path is right. Musashi wasn't waiting for the perfect moment to begin. He wasn't hoping for the world to understand him first. He wasn't building a brand or trying to go viral. He was too busy living, sharpening, practicing, writing, refining. He knew something that we often forget. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs more people who are awake, more people who are grounded, honest, courageous, people who don't just talk about the path, they walk it. Step by step, walk the 1,000-mile path. That's what Musashi told us. Not rush, not arrive, just walk. Step by step, day by day, with presence, with discipline, with heart. And that's the real call here. Not to become someone else, not to escape life, but to show up for your own life fully and to keep walking even when no one's watching, even when the rewards aren't immediate, even when it's hard. So let me ask you now, as we close this journey, what master are you still serving? Is it fear? Is it the past? Is it a job title? A relationship? An image of who you think you're supposed to be? What's keeping you from walking your path? The one you know is yours? It doesn't take a dramatic gesture to begin. You don't need to quit your job tomorrow or move to a mountain. You just need to start paying attention. Start noticing where you're compromising. Start noticing where your actions are out of alignment with your values. Start listening to the voice you've been silencing, the one that's been asking you for something real. Maybe that voice is asking for simplicity. Maybe it's asking for solitude. Maybe it's asking for the courage to say no to something that doesn't feel right, even if it looks right on paper. Whatever it is, listen, and once you've heard it, act. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just honestly, step by step, one choice at a time. That's how the 1,000-mile path is walked. That's how it's always been walked. Musashi didn't start out a master. He started out a boy with a wooden sword standing alone. But he kept walking, he kept refining. And in the end, he became one of the most disciplined, fearless, and grounded human beings history has ever known. Not because he followed orders, not because he chased applause, but because he stayed true. To himself, to the path, to the code he wrote with his own hand. And that's what you're being asked to do now. Not to be Musashi, but to be you fully. Start your Ronin journey today by questioning what no longer serves you, by aligning your choices with your deepest values, by listening to the still, small voice inside you that knows the way. You don't need a master. You just need to choose the truth over comfort, stillness over panic, discipline over distraction. Because when you do, you won't need to be told where to go. You'll know, and you won't need to be carried. You'll walk, step by step. And one day, like Musashi, you'll look back and realize you didn't just walk the path, you became it.